All right, Bible Smack. Um, so I'm doing a little bit of a response to the debate between Mark Ward and I even forgot his name. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Oh, Mark Ward and Doctor. Well, is the KJV readable? And this is what was it? Huh, gosh. This guy's not getting very much fame off of this one. Okay, I've got Mark Ward. I don't even know. Okay, Dan Haifley. Okay. I'm doing this off of Mark Ward's channel, and so he doesn't have that in his title who he's debating. But Dan Haifley is part of the King James Bible Research Council. I did a little bit of work on a separate project with somebody who was affiliated with them, but I'm not deeply knowledgeable as far as like how their organization works or how long they've been around. I feel like they're new. Okay, so maybe that might explain some things, but also I am not an independent fundamental Baptist IFB guy. So I don't know the circle that well. I've met people who are independent Baptists and different things, but it's amazing. There are some people in town. One guy is like, I think it was like a Heritage Baptist Church. And what were they? I think they were independent fundamental Baptists. And then, like, I had another friend who was really even keel on that fundamental level, but he's like a missionary Baptist. Wouldn't know each other, from Adam. I mean, they just so sometimes these circles are not really that tight. So a lot of KJV people, I just don't know. I come out of the Southern Baptist tradition. So far, still am, and preached the last couple of years. Well, anyhow, a lot of y'all might know me if you're into this channel. So let's see here. I kind of isolated some points to make. I know, like, Nick Sayers is gonna like exhaustively cover this stuff, right? But I'm just gonna like kind of make it a little, shorter and concise what my thoughts are, so that might be helpful to certain people. Um, and I've kind of taken my time, so most of those guys have already kind of said what they had to say. So there's a couple points here. Some were made, some were not made, but we'll just go through them. Is the King James Bible readable today? Um, I don't know if the topic was really conceived of properly, and that's kind of made an issue to what exactly are you debating. Dan Haifley is not famous as a debater, and so I think that Mark chose him. Now he'll say because he was decent and charitable, but um, I think also it might be just the fact that he's a nice guy, but I don't think he's profound or proficient as a debater. And that's just an issue. Some stuff is, off your research. Some stuff is about your ability to communicate in a competitive context. So I don't hold that against him as a person. I do feel that Mark had a wide range of KJV people he could debate, and I think he specifically chose him because he would not be as aggressive. Now, the debate is supposed to not talk about the textual issues. Why? Well, probably because Mark is not good to debate that issue. Now, what I've noticed as these anti KJV proponents have kind of descended down through the years, they become less and less scholarly by nature. So, you might have like Bruce Metzger or whatever, give his opinions. And, you could critique his beliefs because they're worth critiquing. But he is extremely well known as a big time Greek Hebrew scholar, all that kind of stuff. So, right up there. Then, later on you see Geisler, and then after him, D.A. Carson. And they're still scholarly, that's all well and good. But then you see James White, and James White, yeah, he's well versed, but not quite on the same level. He's kind of a little bit lower down the hill on some of his thoughts and assumptions. And also, at this point, James White has to start actually arguing with people, whereas D.A. Carson's just kind of bringing out something in general, but at least he's fair, right? Um, James White a little less so, and then James White's been kind of running it and running it and running it for several decades now, and it's been getting old. So Mark Ward comes out. Mark Ward demonstrated very obviously that he was not knowledgeable about the critical text debate. He just, and he wanted to focus on his area of expertise. So his area of expertise is linguistics, and he wants to make everything easier to understand, and he wants to encourage Bible versions. And don't look behind the window and find out that he's making money, promoting other Bible versions from these computer companies. Because we know about the whatchamacallit, when when a book is copyright. We know about the copyright issues, and some people don't know how deep these things go, but it is horrific when you take these Christian companies overseas, where people are having to decide whether or not they educate their children, with a Christian education, or whether they get their Bible software, or whether they get their new, seminary textbook. Everything is the cost goes up dramatically because of inflation. And these colleges and seminaries are doing nothing. They're just letting that go on. So there is a movement to try to stop that, but nevertheless, this is a big deal here. There's a lot of money involved, and me and Nick, we've joked around about a Bible industrial complex. But it's true. I mean, there's a lot of manipulation with some of these companies and the power that goes on there. And I do believe it affects even denominational life. So, let's see here. The first point that was made by Haifley, a lot of people kind of missed because it doesn't really fit the point of the debate. You're thinking, hey, he should start talking about why he thinks the KJV is easy to read. But what he does is something opposite. But it's still a worthy point. And that is, the Bible is not meant to be easy. The gospel is meant to be easy. People can read the gospel and they can get the message of salvation. Let's look at John 3:16. For God, okay, the God, for God, no, for God so loved the world. Okay, so there's God, he loves the world, that he gave his only begotten Son. Okay, so there's the God, the Son of God, gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever, that's anybody, believeth in him. So anybody who does believe in him, what happens to the person who believes? In him should not perish. Okay? So if you believe in him, you should not perish, but have everlasting life. That was the 1611 KJV. It is easy to understand. But these other concepts are not easy to understand. They're not supposed to be easy to understand. They're supposed to be things that you learn and that you invest your time and your energy into. Now, when we try to dumb down the Bible, we're not fitting the goal of education. You can have parts that are easy to understand, and what you do with the Bible is you start with the easier things and then you kind of move up over time. You might say, okay, I'm going to read the Gospel of Mark. Maybe read the first chapter of Genesis. Read the Ten Commandments. Read the 23rd Psalm. You read these little things that are easier. And then you start building on and building up. And as you start building up, then you start growing in your understanding. And then, like, well, what if I can't figure it all out? Well, then you have a pastor and they can come and help you. Okay? So the Bible was meant to be studied and learned and a source of our education. And if it's a source of our education, we don't get it right then. If it was something that would be easy, it would not be 66 books or what? 79 books? 78 books? The Apocrypha, the Eastern Orthodox have another canon of their Apocrypha versus the Roman Catholic canon. And then the Ethiopians have a different canon from the rest of the Eastern Orthodox. So, it just goes up from there, right? These books are meant for education, and education demands discipline. It's not supposed to be a commercial. You can summarize the gospel very quickly and easily. But to know the Bible is to study a large mass of material over your lifetime. I've learned so much more than I did when I made the decision for Christ at the age of 7. It's expected that I learned so much more now than then. So, it is the right approach, maybe not the right debate topic selected. And then, let's see here. Truly. Okay. When the concept of spurious words doesn't truly exist. Because the idea is that the word is no longer in operation. As soon as Mark Ward mentions these words, they're in operation. Not to mention, millions of people reading from the King James Version still to this day. And there are people, Nick Sayers pointed this out, There are people who are not even, categorically the same idea of Christian that we have, but they're still reading it. He talked about Rastafarians still, they read from the King James. You know, um, you know who encourages the King James Bible in the public schools of Britain? Atheist Richard Dawkins. And he's been doing so for years. Okay. Because he wants to get culture out of the Bible. That's what he uses it for, is for culture. Okay, fine. Um, so, these words are around and people do use them. And different segments have different groups of words. I live in Kentucky, and if I go to Appalachia, they'll tell me how I'm so glad to see you. I sounds like AH, but that's their way of saying I. Um, they've got their own phraseologies and sets of words. When I go to the West End of Louisville, they actually have similar talk to the hillbillies, but sometimes they'll have words that phrases that I've never heard of. And so I'm still learning phrases. And, some of these phrases, they're different. They may be what Mark says are archaic, but they're not in the King James Version. And I heard Mark use a couple phrases. I don't know if it was this debate or another speech, but he used a couple phrases that are not in the King James Bible. And that's interesting because different people have different sets of thoughts. Um, when Nick Sayers, he's an Australian, he took a trip to Kentucky. No, he didn't take a trip. He took a trip to the United States, and he saw that we have these signs that say yield. Okay, well, they don't use the word yield in Australia, but they have words that they use, and they might say reckon. And I reckon I know the word reckon, but a lot of people don't. So you have different words, and different words go to different places. There are things that people say that Mark Ward probably doesn't understand. And that's okay. But just because we have different words doesn't mean we have a different language. So when Mark Ward is speaking of 1 Corinthians 14, you got two things going on. Either A, you're talking about fully different languages, or B, you're talking about the tongues of men and angels, which is incomprehensible. So that verse that he uses as his go-to verse is talking about things that cannot be comprehended. But yet these things can be comprehended. Otherwise, Mark wouldn't write a book that's showing their comprehension. Like he really goes after this issue of meat, and said that meat back then meant food in general, and so they were talking about false teachers not eating meat. Well, there might be a lack of understanding by plenty of readers, okay? And the reason is because there are different uses of definitions, but there's also something that is missing here. And that is you determine things objectively according to context. I wrote somebody a message late at night last night. Didn't think about it. It was just too late, and so I'm kind of, Yeah, a couple words get misspelled. And then um, I get up in the morning and I see it. And I'm like, oh no, that's misspelled. But like it was like I think I put a wrong letter. Like I said good guys, and then like good got messed up. But then I finished the sentence, the bad guys. Well, now you see a context. The good guy and the bad guys. Oh, good guys. Okay. Context helps you with the definition of a word. Now, there were two sources brought up: dictionaries, English dictionaries, and concordances. Both of these two are helpful, but both of these two have fallibility. And why would I say that? Because the context is how they get their definition. Well, the context is right there in the text, but the word is used in different contexts, and that's why words have different definitions. And you're not even guaranteed to know all the definitions because people always use words in different ways. We're coming up with new ways to use words constantly if you listen to contemporary music. Okay. Which I'm kind of getting older, so it's slipping away, And yeah, I remember when I was like in high school, and I was like, yeah, the latest tunes. And then I had a friend go to college, and she wrote back. She's just not quite as much into it as she was a couple years back. She's into other things now, and so you get away from. But what's a song that'd be like, "Baby, are you down?" Well, are you feeling down? Did you fall down? What happened, baby? um, See, the word can be used many, many different ways, and they keep on going with it. Now, in hermeneutics, what we do in hermeneutics is the science of interpretation. You find the meaning of the text. Okay, so you look at the context, and you find those definitions. But really, you have to have the context, and you find the meaning of the text, and then you find the implications of the text. What can the word be used for? So, men who were, stopping you from eating meats. Well, if you only understood that to eat meat, you could still expand the context and say food anyway, because they're using it in the same way. I might try that here in a second. Heck. 1 Timothy 4. Okay, so, and by the way, this is used in other translations. That's what I'm going to make my next point about. But let's see here. Okay. All right. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with hot iron, forbidding to marry and commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believed and know the truth. So this is in general because um, it's talking about which God hath created, right? And then also it's one of several topics. So what they're doing is they're saying here's something that's a lie and hypocrisy. And basically it's, verse 1 says that they shall depart from their faith, giving heed to seducing spirits, doctrines of devils. So, those things are in a general package. So you can make that word general, and a lot of people do that. They have different meanings on general, that kind of stuff. So, once again, the text is not thwarted out of an archaism. Also, you get deeper into the scripture, then you'll figure something like that out. And even then, I'm not going to say that Mark is absolutely right. I think there needs to be more study done. I'm not passionate enough to get too deep into that. Maybe if you looked at Will Kinney, he usually has a lot of resources on stuff like that, so his opinion would be valued. But my position and several others, I think Nick's with me on this, but we don't see the issue of the readability of translation as the big deal about the King James Version, modern versions, and stuff like that. You can have a good enough translation. Other languages have to have a good enough translation, and that's fine. So you can use the Text Receptus, the Masoretic Hebrew text, and you can create a good enough Bible. The issue is that what is the standard? What sets the standard of translation? And for many reasons, but this one kind of sticks out. The fact that the king authorized the production of the version, the king being an authority of the English language. Um, as a result of that, um, that would make it, supposed to be the standard. And then the acceptance of it by congregations all over the world as the most reproduced book, not just translation, book on the face of the earth, would say, okay, this is the standard text. Also, it's not necessary to, you know, be focused on the King James when translating into a foreign language. But I will say that it is, for natural reasons, very, very good advice. And the reason is because a lot of languages are not as developed as the King's English. And, especially if there is similarity some way to the English language or the roots of the Germanic or the Latin, okay, well, maybe this would be a good way to be an advisor in the role of translating. But yeah, so when we talk about texts that are not up for debate in the Greek and Hebrew, we're not making it a sin to have a different word, but we're not giving the endorsement of those words to anyone but the King James. So, you can have proofs and updates, and that's fine. Now, like Nick says, he's made some updates to King James. Mark says nobody is. Oops, did Mark tell a lie? Or is Mark an idiot? But basically, yeah. So those are out there. And, I don't see an issue with it unless, Nick came down and said, all the King James are now defunct. I have the super 2024 edition of the King James, and everybody has to go to it and not me. No, it's a resource. It's a good resource. I want to check it out sometime. So nothing wrong with having these things as a resource and learning and growing. If you want to look at some of these other translations and you find that, okay, well, this area here, the words are close enough to the Greek and Hebrew out of the Text Receptus and the Masoretic text, then yeah. But the issue would be that would help my interpretation. And I'm not going to go over and make a whole new translation. So, um, there is a preference. And why? Readability. How many people have read the King James Version versus the others currently? Okay. 400 and, so many more years later, here we are, and people, 55% of Bible readers in America are reading out of the King James. Okay, so it's still there. It's still valid. In fact, it's the most valid of all the translations. But they try to make the big deal to be the NIV because 19% are reading from it. Now, some other points. New versions have false friends. Now, I remember this back, let's see here. Sam Gipp did a good YouTube series called What's the Big Deal About the KJV? Not to say that I agree with everything that Sam Gipp is doing, far from it, but he does make some really good points every now and again. And so what he was doing here is he was saying, um, if you look at some of these other versions, they have problems with archaisms. So, like, that First Timothy 4:3, okay? There are other versions that are using the same wording. So, why is it that the KJV is the big enemy, okay, when it comes to abstain from meats? Well, let's see here. The American Standard Version says abstain from meats. I didn't check this one, so it just be. I want to see if they changed it or not. Okay, 21st century King James, abstain from meats. Okay, not a big shock. And the Living Bible. Now, the Living Bible, that's easy to understand. It says, they will say it is wrong to be married and wrong to eat meat. Okay. So meat is still there, abstain from meats. The Young's literal translation, okay, an ultra literal translation. Forbidding to marry, to abstain from meats that God created. Okay. And that one, I do have to say, I think it's capable that they're wrong, but I'm definitely going to trust them more than Mark Ward. So, that's why I think, it'd be good to talk to Will Kinney sometime, see what he had to say about that. All right. So the false friends issue, why are you isolating it to the King James Version? If you really care about this, Mark, why don't you talk about all the other versions when they have false friends? Or they have a word that is not only a false friend, but is not in the King James either. So let's see here. What is that word that was talked about? Paramour. Oh no, it was used once. Okay. But it might be a different one than what I was thinking. Okay. Oh no, that was in Young's literal translation. Okay. So it wasn't the King James. Well, no, hold on. Just march my P's and Q's. Alright. Where'd you go? Okay. So anyhow, let's see here. I remember James White was once trying to talk about all these words that aren't spoken anymore. And he said, ado. We don't say ado anymore. Well, probably if you pronounce it right, ado. Much ado about nothing. So, that was a popular movie in the 90s. Okay, I bid you adieu. I know people are using that word. Anyhow, the NIV, they'll talk in Acts chapter 17, and Paul goes to Areopagus. Now, the reader just thinks, okay, he went to some place. What was that place like? I don't know. It was Areopagus. That's a foreign language. It's in Greek. You're like, aha, we'll be scholarly. We'll show you something in Greek. Hold on. You're. What about this whole I want to help the plowboy. Let me touch the plowboy and give him a Bible. Yeah. Okay. Why are you speaking to him in Greek? What does the King James say? Mars Hill. Like the planet Mars, like the Mars bar, like the Greek god Mars and his hill. Okay, now at least I know what it's talking about. That is easier to understand than the modern version. You see what they're doing? Okay, let's see here. Then fuse to print. The text receptus is not making the text easier to understand. So our buddy, I keep on getting his name, Haifley, Dan Haifley. Don't worry, Dan, I'm not trying to be a hater. But Dan Haifley did sneak this point in, but it shouldn't be snuck in. It should be obvious. It's not just the fact that you have a different text, it's that you will not translate the Textus Receptus text. So when you take those words out of the Bible, I cannot read them. People